So welcome to the show, Yannick and Eddie. How are you guys doing today?
We are doing great, amazing.
Yes.
Right. Awesome. You guys been married for 16 plus years and you have had a very loving relationship. And so, as I mentioned, what happens sometimes people have a wrong idea of what love is. And so in your mind, Yannick, since you brought that up, what is love? How does it look in from your perspective in your relationship?
What is love? You don't hurt me.
No, we don't want no royalties or no flags on this, so we won't say anymore.
Okay.
Um, but as far as love, what love looks like to me, it's interesting because I have to go based on what I've experienced in love, and what the experience has been is different than what I assumed it was going to be prior to getting married. And what love has been this emotional roller coaster, in a sense of really digging deep to where I am and learning about where my husband is. And it's been a process of, okay, I love you, you love me. What does that look like, as it relates to how I'm loving you and how I'm receiving what I feel should be love. And sometimes we have to redefine or in a sense, change our thinking towards what that love language is, and sometimes in different seasons of the relationship, that's when I realized, okay, well, this is part of love, where it's the giving, you receive, but then sometimes you're so empty, you have nothing to give but the words, and same thing for the other person. They might not be able to accommodate all of your desires or heart's desires, but it's that willingness to say, in this season, in this moment, we love each other. And how can we navigate those waters, even when one of us might be empty or one of us might be full, and when we're overflowing. So not trying to be too poetic, but that's what comes to mind.
Yeah.
Of, love.
So you mentioned something, and I'm gonna come back to that. You said you had an assumption coming in. I want to ask you and Eddie, what were your assumption coming in to this relationship, even through the lens of love? What was the assumption?
Honestly, I came in with a I don't know, a fresh blank canvas ready to paint, because I mean I've been through relationships, and most of the relationships that I've been in prior to me and Unique started dating was very superficial. I thought it was love, but it wasn't. There was affection and there was caring, but it wasn't true love, because it was more like, how can I what can I get out of this relationship versus how can we build together. And when we started dating, I learned how can we build together and make this work versus what can I get from out of this. So when you go into a relationship or in anything, thinking what can you get out of it versus how can we build and how can we serve each other, I think that changes the whole perspective, and it helps you to grow better and helps you to work things out much easier, with that perspective in mind.
So here's what I think, Eddie, you mentioned, that's very interesting that you mentioned that, because sometimes people have a different way of the script, the story, the narrative coming into a relationship. What can I get? You're describing what can you give. Where did you learn that? I'm asking you both. How did you learn that? If so, maybe Yannick, you may have learned something different, but I want to ask you, where did that come from? How did you learn that about love?
Well, for me, what I saw at church, really, some of the married couples in a church that I was going to when I was a youth, so long ago.
Still a youth.
But just seeing the way how they care for each other, where we would do these like Sundays after church, and you would see how the men would serve their wife. It wasn't just the wife serving the husband, but the way they served each other, it was more of a caring way versus an obligation, where I saw how the men was doing things that people may say, oh, it's just a woman's job, you know, or vice versa. And just seeing them actually lovingly do that. And then also seeing the bad side of it, you know, so just going through, seeing the beauty of what a relationship, a healthy relationship looks like, helped prepare my heart for it. And what I loved before we got married, shout out to Peter and Kim. They're friends of ours. And before we got married, they did almost like a
Marriage
boot camp.
Oh,
Yeah, it was so beautiful. It was them and a few other couples that we knew within our circle, but it was just a real small group, and they allowed us to invite another couple who was engaged. And they really gave us the breakdown. It was like, seriously, it was boot camp. And to this day, I don't think they realized how helpful that was, because when we started dating, we never really argued.
yeah.
And these were couples that we looked up to, like, oh my gosh, they're perfect. They're like the perfect power couple. But when we did that boot camp, they were so honest and open about the challenges they faced. And it wasn't just surface, but they talked about the arguments and how they had to fight each other, not physically, but fight for their love, as they learn how to communicate, like, okay, we need to break down the walls, and we're breaking down the egos and all these different layers. And that really helped us to be like, oh my gosh, these are people that we thought were like perfect, and like they face these challenges. So that was so helpful in helping me to go into this.
So it sounds like, Eddie, you're kind of nodding and also cited that as one of the helpful ways, or the place you can learn that as well. Would that be where this came from for you as well?
Yes, but a lot of it also is the way my upbringing. I grew up on both my parents, and I saw the way how my dad loved my mother, the way how till this day they're still married.
Wow.
You know, shout out to them. I think they're going on 50 years next year, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, but no, just the way how my parents they treat each other. My dad, you know, he was out for months at a time providing for the household, but it wasn't something where he did it, okay, this is my obligation, like how Unique said. It's not out of obligation, but hey, you know what? You're my responsibility, and we're building this together. So therefore, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice myself so that way you could be okay, we could be okay when it gets to the point of me not being able to continue to work, which my dad has retired over 3 years now, you know, and he's like, hey, you know what? We can now continue building where we left off, because I am no longer out away from the house or away from home. We can continue and live the rest of our lives out together, loving, caring for each other and other people. So church and mainly my parents.
Awesome. So, I mean, you mentioned about this couple who are very vulnerable, because they were showing to you on the outside, it seemed like everything was perfect. And their vulnerability is sharing about how they had to kind of navigate times when things were tough in their lives. And every relationship have those moments, right? And so it sounded like you were prepared, knowing through the lens of love, what to look for, what to do. What about the times when you may feel like, you know, there's something's missing, there's a disconnect, and if you had those moments, how did you work through them? What was most helpful at those times, and what was it like?
Oh, really tough. I think for us, having the conversation that we're going to dig deep in this problem, fight it out in a sense, to get to the root of what is the real issue here. Is it really this, or is it something else? Because sometimes when you face those challenges, when you think it was come to find out there's something so much deeper than what's being said. So it's like really taking the time to dig deep and being patient through that process, I think has helped us. And I feel like those moments that we've had, those breakthroughs, has ended up being so beautiful. I know it seems weird, but it's almost like us locked in a room and like, let's get at it. Okay, what's the problem? You know? Boom. Oh, it's because you this and I this. And it's like, no. What's the real problem here? Is it really that? And then like as we share, then we start realizing as we're speaking to each other, like, wait, the real problem is this. that issue just opened the door to kind of shed light of what's going on in the heart. It's like a heart check, a mind check, a perspective check during the season. I remember the first time it had to do with the dream. It's always been about the dream. So weird. So it's like, okay, we've been around this block before. What's the real problem? And it was where, Eddie had a dream to do something. And for me, I thought,
I still do.
anyways, I thought in a loving way, which was a warped way to view it, was okay, if he wants to do this particular project so bad, fine. Instead of him leaving me, which is what I thought he would leave me to do this project, I'll go ahead and give him a ticket, in a sense, to say, hey, go ahead. If you want to do this so bad, go travel out to California, do whatever you're doing. And whenever you're done with your project, come back. But I'm not supporting that because we're not in a situation to do that. And I just remember him looking at me like, it's not that serious. I can cancel the project. I wouldn't leave you for that.
Right.
But it was like me, in a sense, feeling I had the power to tell him to go versus him going and leaving me on his own. And that has to deal with just my personal bringing. And, thank God there's been restoration and stuff with my family members. So I feel comfortable sharing, this now, and they know that. But it's like, at that moment, I realized, I was like, what's wrong with me? And then I realized that was the reason why. It's like, okay, well, that person who's important to me left, they checked out. So I would rather give him permission to check out before he does it to me. So I remember that was like a tough.
I wasn't ready to check out.
Yeah. So there's an assumption going. So there's a lot of assumptions that are made in marriages, right, about certain things. Like you described, for example, you had a certain internal way of interpreting what this meant, and by checking in, you realize it meant something else, right? So you showed some maturity along the way. But Eddie, when that was happening, how did you manage your own emotions or manage the relationship at that moment, knowing that it wasn't what you intended or have even was trying to communicate to her, but she had that? How did you manage that moment?
I mean, it hurt because I'm like, is she hinting at something here? And I was like, yeah, it's really not that serious. Like I prefer for us to be at peace than me out doing something and knowing that, me and my wife were having, at each other, whether it be, just a misunderstanding, or whether, she had the thought process of, well, hey, you go do you and I'm gonna do me, and it is what it is. We worked it out. Communication is key. So we're like, okay, well, really, like it's not that, it's really not that serious. And throughout that time, we've grown so much beyond that, where if situations like that was like spark back up again, like we're like, okay, we're at this again. We already know what to do. We already wrote the manual to this, so might as well, let's just go ahead and get rid of it. Chapter 5, verse.
Yeah, it's some couples in moments like this, they will use the word compatibility, right? They're not compatible, and so this is proof to them in their mind that this is a compatibility issue, right? So, and they will check out, that will end their marriage, right? So when you hear, or did you have at any time that crossed your mind, or when you hear people use that word, right, to dissolve their marriage over something like that, what's your thoughts on that? How would you speak to those issues, and did that ever cross your mind about a compatibility issue?
Oh, you wanna go?
I'll let you go first.
No, honestly, I mean, like I really believe that ever since we were friends, and emotions started to build, I felt in my heart like, hey, you know what, I think this is something that can grow into something beautiful. I think that she could be the one that I spend the rest of my life with. There was a lot of things where we're like, okay, you know what, yes, we are compatible because we're both into the arts and entertainment, field, and we are both working towards accomplishing similar goals in maybe different arenas or different lanes, but we're working towards the same outcome. And I've never really seen it as, you know what, we may not be compatible, but we've had situations where moments may not have been the right time, and our compatibility for situations might have been very frictionated, and if that's even a word, very,
We'll make it a word tonight.
we kind of rub hard against each other because it's like, yeah, this ain't really working. Like, you want to go left, I want to go right, and we're not getting anywhere here. But as it relates to us together as a unit, no, I've never really seen us as not compatible. However, something that somebody mentioned one time, a pastor mentioned one time, is that you have people who God will bring them together, and you may be from the window, outside window, looking at this relationship, like, how in the world do you all even, manage to be together? It's like, you're type A, you're very, reserved, laid back, but they kind of work.
Yes.
And what we would look at from a third party person looking and say, like, they're not compatible, it works for them. And I think that's the beauty of when God brings people together. It's like you have one whole complementing another whole. I don't like when they say, oh, you're a better half or this half. No, we are one whole unit, another whole unit, meshing together to become a bigger whole unit. So yeah.
Okay.
Is there time for me to touch on that?
Yes, I'd like for you to touch on that from a female perspective, because I tend to be where I hear that some doesn't mean it's a gender kind of conversation. It comes both ways, but who brings the most sound in the first place is the female. So I would like to hear your perspective on that.
Okay. So when I hear couples share their frustration about, oh, we're no longer compatible, or we're just growing apart or whatever, it really boils down to the understanding of what I've experienced recently, I should say, is the support system, where that person might not support you like they did before. Their support might look different, but that doesn't mean they don't love you. That doesn't mean the love has ended. We just have to figure out ways to still express our love, but it might look different than before. And that's something that we experience. And I know for me, I was like, okay, is this what could break our relationship just because of whether he doesn't support me in this area, I don't support him? And it's like looking at the bigger picture. Okay, out of 30 things that you've experienced such beautiful relationship and great support, that one area, you're telling me you're going to allow that one area to cloud your judgment of all the other things that is beautiful about your relationship? And we got to that point where we're like, okay, fine. If this is something that is, and it's like putting in layers. Okay, why don't you want to do this particular project? Or why don't you want me to do this? Or why can't we do this together? Because there are many areas we started out together. So when it became like children involved and making other decisions with the finances, that's when we're like, okay, what we view as important or priority is very different versus what we thought of years ago. And how do we make that change? And I just remember us having those conversations of, oh, you don't support me. Or he would say, you don't support me. It's like, no, it's not that I don't support this. I don't support this idea right now, but I still love you. And I think that's where some couples end up falling short, where they think just because a person's support has changed in a particular area means they don't love them at all. It's like, how can we navigate this challenge where we can kind of leave this as a non-negotiable or negotiable later on, giving time for certain challenges to take a step back. Everything doesn't need to be resolved right now. That's good. That's the challenge, where it's like, okay, if it's not resolved right now, it's done. It's like, okay, we may need a couple weeks, a couple months, a couple years. And we have to be okay with still loving each other, talking to each other, communicating while that challenge is being resolved. And it might not ever get resolved, but that doesn't mean we don't love each other.
This is very interesting, because I think that's where I call it's permission being given to the relationship to change, to grow, to expand, right? And so that is growth in process, and there's always growing pains that people experience. And so we don't abort that child because there's pain there, because growth is occurring. And sometimes what you're describing is this growth process. And sometimes people misinterpret growth to mean, like you just said so beautifully, you both said, lack of support, right? So I think which is really a segue to a very good question I have for you guys here, about, because you guys are, I would be regarded as a power couple, meaning that you're both influencers and pursuing your career goals, and that are life-changing for other people in what you guys do. Now, how do you do that and still make time to find a balance, right? Whatever balance means for family and everything else that's going on, because that's could be very challenging for some relationship that is, just don't make 16 years. So how do you do that?
Calendar, Google calendar. No, I think with both of us, we have different seasons throughout the year where it could be busy for one person, and the other person will just kind of like take the back seat and just take care of certain things. And we try to schedule in as much together time as we can during those busy seasons. Like I know for myself, during the summertime, I'm always busy because I'm touring or I'm out of town doing events or so. But then outside of the summertime, I'm basically the one that will take the backseat role while she do a lot of the things that she's doing with the show and things of that nature. But then of course there may be those small pockets where both of us are extremely busy, and it's like we're giving 100% to everything else, and we kind of push. I don't want to say neglect is not the right word, is the wrong word, but it may seem like we're neglecting each other, but we're not. It's just that we get busy. But what we normally do is, hey, you know what? We set time apart and we say, okay, you know what? We have children that we have to spend time with. So we set a day in the week. That day, we don't do anything else but handle family business. We may go to the movies, or we may do dinner and a movie at home, or we may go for a drive, get some ice cream. But it's just a time where we spend time as a family together. We're not doing nothing else, no business, no ministry, nothing, just focus on family. And lately, what we've been doing is we've been going on morning breakfast date, because we realize in the evening times it's not that easy with the whole pickup and drop off process with the kids, and after work or after an event or whatever the case may be, we're tired, we're exhausted, we just want to lay down and just I'm done with this day. So early in the morning, before everything gets started, we go out on breakfast date, and that seems to be working. Kids that seemed to kind of work, and we've been doing that for quite some time now, and we've put that into our weekly routine, and it's been really good. So it's just a matter of developing small routines and scheduling time for each other, for your kids, and for yourself, because you don't want to give 100% to everybody and you don't give anything to yourself. And to yourself doesn't have to be, okay, you know what, I need a whole day for myself. No, it may just be go for a drive. Some days I'll just take a drive and listen to music on the highway, or I'll go and sit down at the airport and watch the airplanes. And that's my time to myself, an hour, 2 hours, just chilling and good to go. But you have to be able to schedule time in there for both self, for your spouse, and for your kids.
Definitely, I agree with that. And then also you have to be honest with each other, because what one person may view as, hey, I'm doing this for the family, the other person might not view that. So no, in certain seasons for us, he might be out event after event, back to back, and then serving at church and doing all these things, which they're noble, they're great, but it's taking time away from me and the kids, or I might be, a lot of what I've done lately, because I'm not on stage like I used to be in the past, on stage with him or just doing my thing. I had to shift to more virtual and behind the scenes. So a lot of what I do involves me behind the computer, producing, editing, and doing things like that. So it's like sometimes I could be in the same room, but just so zoned in on trying to get a project done. So it's like we have to be honest with each other. Like, okay, what you might be viewing as doing this for the family is taking time away from the family. How
Mhm.
can we make sure that we're balancing this out in a healthy way? Because the last thing you want to be is successful on the top and then looking around and you're by yourself, you know?
Mhm.
So I really take a lot of notes from, succeeding where other people have failed. I'm so sorry. I have to say it, because, I've seen where couples
Yeah.
who you see them on television, they're doing their big time interviews, but then you see their children on another interview saying, I don't know who that person is. I
Mhm.
barely see them. I don't even know them. I'm like, okay, well, as much as we want to attain this level of success, we have to figure out creative ways to do so where we're not neglecting each other, family, because you see empty nesters, all these different things. I'm like taking notes. Okay, let's be careful of that. Let's be careful of
Mhm.
that because it's so easy to get lost in doing things for the legacy of your family and not collectively spending time feeding each other emotionally, and
Mhm.
just talking, so
I think that you have highlighted a few things that I think both of you, which is so important. I think the idea of being a good student of life, a student of other people's relationship, and learning from those, right? So you can implement um, things in your relationship that makes it better for you, which is really, I think, is some of the common mistakes that people do. They don't necessarily learn from others. They don't take the time to be a student of other relationships, like you're describing so well. They don't take the time, as you're saying, Eddie, is to build time for yourself as well as the marriage, right? Even though you're parents and have kids, but the marriage is also need that nurturing. So I'm hearing that is because one of the questions I was going to ask, but you've answered the question already. Is like, what are some of the common mistakes that people make in their relationship? You're describing really what you're kind of highlighting in a way, the common mistake they make, not taking time for their marriage, not taking time for themselves, not learning from other people, right? So that's some of the common mistakes that people make. And so in the idea of mistakes, and sometimes in our relationship when things happen, right? Going back to what you said earlier and how you navigated those moments. I wonder, what role does forgiveness play in your marriage, right? In requesting, offering, and receiving forgiveness. And when you've had moments like that, how did you guys, what was it like, in either offering, receiving, or requesting it?
Go ahead. All right,
I
so
just went.
all right, I I'm from the philosophy. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, "Don't let the sun go down, with anger or wrath in your heart, because you basically give." This is my paraphrase version.
Of
You
course.
basically giving the devil a foothold to hold on you, because you go to sleep angry with somebody. You may wake up the following day and you're more angry for no reason, or you may go to sleep with anger and you don't wake up.
Mhm.
And you don't want to be remembered, the last thing, if you were to sleep off into your sleep, and be remembered as, oh yeah, he went to bed angry,
Mm.
and I didn't get a chance to forgive or ask for forgiveness. So when we in our early stage of marriage, like if we had like a discussion or an argument or so, like we will not go to sleep until we hash that out, until like, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, you know and a lot of times I would be the bigger person and ask for forgiveness, even though it wasn't my fault.
You would still do it, right?
I'm gonna still do it because I want to go to sleep. I want to sleep good. But no, but I think forgiveness, like you have to like own up to your stuff.
Mm.
If you make a mistake, don't try to be all egotistic about it, and all into your own feelings, like no.
Mhm.
Forgiveness, ask for forgiveness, and keep it moving. You know what I'm saying? That way you can hash out, or get rid of whatever drama or problem that could arise. Um, because the other person may think that, okay, you know what, they have this ideology or this idea of whatever the case may be, and
Mm.
they're wrong.
Mm.
They did something they weren't supposed to, and they're wrong for it. So instead of owning it up, they just want to be like, it is what it is, throw it under the rug like nothing never happened.
Mm.
Hey, own up your mess and
Mm.
just ask for forgiveness.
Mm.
Now, accepting accepting somebody, asking for forgiveness sometimes, and everybody's case is different, but
Mm.
sometimes could be hard, because if you're coming from the avenue of that person hurt me, it may be hard to just easily say, you know what, I forgive you. You know, they say it's much easier said than done. But you may say, yeah, I forgive you, but I don't forget. Well, that's realistically, that's not really forgiving, because you're still holding on to something. You know, you're just saying it for face value, you know, like, oh yeah, I forgive you.
No, in all fairness,
I'm saying everybody, no, wait, hold on. Everybody's case is different. So I'm just saying,
so
but in our case, we've learned the art of forgiving and accepting forgiveness. You know, when you're wrong, you ask for forgiveness and you apologize. If somebody hurt you, you know, you accept their apology and you learn how to forgive.
So like, for me in the beginning, I used to say, I forgive you, but I need time to heal. So that's what I used to say. So even though, you know, looking back on those things that we argued about, it was like, what? That was so like minor, but it was so major.
Yes.
You know, it felt like major, you know, issues at the time. I was like,
you didn't wash the dishes when I asked you to.
Like literally, like we had an argument about, because, you know, for me, I'm frugal. So I was like, ketchup is ketchup, you know, cereal is cereal. But no, I want Raisin Bran. I want Kellogg's. Like,
and she wanted to get the value brand, and I'm like, it's not the same.
You know, and even our perspective of treating ourselves, I'm like, you know, treat yourself when you have X amount in the bank. For him, it was like, it's payday, you know, you treat ourselves. So like these different things that we navigate through, but I used to do that a lot. Now I've done better as far as
actually the roles have turned a couple of times, because I'm like, do we have money for all of this? Like, hold
no,
up.
that's true. So, well, I don't know if you're gonna bring this up, but that's another thing, giving love a chance, right? When you give love a chance, you realize that as you learn to yield to each other, to serve each other, to love the other person the way you realize they enjoy to be loved, you tend to change. Like in the beginning, like when we would have conversations, I would want to go into the details with him, thinking, okay, he wants to hear the details. So there are times he'll be like, no, all I want is a yes or no. So now I notice I'm just at that point where it's just a yes or no, and he wants to go into this whole big story. I'm like, I'm good. I was just good at the first part. No, I just wanted to tell you. I'm like, you know, so it's just so funny to see how that part has like, you know, changed. But you know, forgiveness has played a major role, and just our faith walk, I feel has really helped us, because when we spend time like praying and devotion, things that happen in the relationship, I noticed like he would come and just apologize. Things that have definitely like hurt my heart. Like, oh, you know, the perspective issue is like, oh, well, like he would take in the past, I noticed that I could say things like, oh, well, yeah, that's a great idea. And there's a certain season where my ideas weren't so great anymore. It was just like, just let me do what I want to do. Don't chime in. If I fail, I fail. And that was so different for me. I was like, what? You don't want to hear like for me? And then that caused a rift. So it's like just navigating, forgiving each other, like, okay, well, the way we respond to each other, the tone we use.
Yeah.
We even got to a season where instead of us talking, we'll email, and it's like these cat.
Wait. Speak for yourself. You're the only one that emails, okay?
You know, send emails or so where it's like, okay, well, we get it out either way.
Yeah.
Forgiveness plays a major role.
Yeah, you know, I think as I sat here and just listened to that, because I think this fits into a framework that I believe is very fitting to kind of it's almost like I would say put like a template in place here, because I think what I'm hearing is that you guys are committing to change, right? So change has to take place in any area of our relationship, whether it's growth and so on. So you're committing to the change that is necessary, right? But you're also submitting for change. So when you just said, right, submit to each other, basically, you're doing it for the sake of change. You're allowing change to be the thing that, you know, guide and mold and shape you, right? So submitting for change, which is not the easy part, because you have to submit your will and your way. And it's what you guys are doing, which is really leading to what you're experiencing, a happier relationship, right? And then the last piece of that is permit that change, right? You're giving permission for the change to take place. And you keep on just going through those circling back and forth because it's, rinse and repeat, because what happened is that's the way forward. That's the relationship you're experiencing, right? And I think some couples fail in those areas because they don't allow those kind of I just call it the framework to take place, right? Because for forgiveness, right, to give and take forgiveness, and you said something very interesting, Eddie, because sometimes people will say that, yeah, if I forgive you, then the fear is then that means I have to then let it go, right? But letting it go is not easy, especially if you're the hurt person, right? But so I'm hearing that you guys have kind of learned how to, for the relationship's sake, let it go. Would that be a fair assessment of what
Yeah,
I'm heard?
Let
yeah.
it go. Let
And,
it go.
and just realizing that there's certain things that it's really not that serious.
Mhm.
Just it's a matter of perspective, and it's a matter of, okay, is this really life and death?
Mhm, mhm,
Like
mhm,
seriously, so and then also there's certain things where it's like, okay, that's my point of view, or
mhm,
that's my recommendation, where
mhm,
my recommendation does not have to be concrete or happen right now. And
mhm,
sometimes what he may recommend, I might take it right away, or I might say no, and then
mhm,
I'll
mhm,
process it. And then I realize, well, that's a pretty good idea, and
mhm,
vice versa. But in
mhm,
the moment, it's like, okay, is this really something that we should allow to destroy our date? Especially
mhm.
when you're upset with each other, and you do these little things trying to dodge each other, not look at each other, or like when you're talking, you're mumbling, yeah, you want something to
Mhm,
eat,
mhm,
it's like, but it's like, okay, how long are you gonna let that last? Because the way I view it now is every second we allow that to
mhm,
cultivate, those are seconds that we're robbing each other of an
mhm,
opportunity to be loving to each other and enjoy life, versus
mhm,
allow this to rob us of our joy. So that's
mhm.
how I look at it now.
So I think I'm hearing again that where you guys started about this love idea and giving love, let love become that one thread that kind of weaves its way through the fabric of the relationship is where you guys are still saying and holding on to. That's what is allowing you to be patient and being kind and be gentle and so on, right? Yes, it just ebbs and flows to that. But at the end of the day, you're still going to anchor around the word love because that is your commitment to love each other, through the highs, the lows, and so on, where people bail out. And I wonder, I mean, this is such a great, a great way of you guys kind of allowing people to hear from a perspective of what I call this a mature relationship, because not every relationship is so much is mature or is growing into maturity, where you take time to look at it this way and give the other person a chance, and not to be so quick, right, to conclude about some things when you really don't have all the information. So you really are a bit beyond the curve in many relationships, right? So a couple that might be struggling right now and listening, and they want their marriage to be happier, and they feel stuck, right? They just feel stuck in general, and I would love for you both to kind of speak to that. What would you say to that husband, Eddie, and Yannick? What would you say to that wife who is feeling that, but don't even know where to start or what to do? What would you say to that person who's listening right now, who may be struggling and it feels stuck?
Let me get position for this one. Um, put yourself in her position. Put yourself in her shoes, not literally, but put yourself put yourself in her shoes, and just kind of, how would you want to be treated? How would you want to be spoken to if you were in her position of, do I feel loved? How can I, do I feel valued? But at the same time, not forgetting that you also are not just giving, but you're also on the receiving end. So you also want to, as the husband, how do I want to be loved?
Mm,
There's a famous saying that says, do unto others as you want them to do unto you.
mhm,
So if I want to feel loved by my spouse, by my wife, I am going to show her more love. If I want my wife to care more about my physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever needs I have, I definitely want to do the same thing for her. If I want my wife to cook me some curry steak, I'm gonna want to do that too. But there's also responsibilities that comes with that, because it's not just the I love you and the relationship aspect, but there's things that will they're triggered things that will cause the wife to gravitate more towards you. A woman wants to feel secure. A woman definitely wants to feel not just that they're loved, but that they're appreciated and valued. So you definitely want to sometimes make that extra effort to love them, even though it may cost us a little bit more, but just for that way, because the way I see it is this: I'm not of the philosophy of happy wife, happy life, because that's a bunch of baloney. But I'm of the philosophy of, if my wife is feeling good and feeling loved and feeling appreciated, she's gonna give me the same thing. If my wife is feeling respected, she's gonna give me the same thing. If my wife feels like she is the only woman in this world because I made her feel that way, she's gonna make me feel like I'm the only man in this world, because that's the way how she sees me. So definitely, if you're a God-fearing person, put God first. God will always guide you into the right path and put the right things in your mind, in your brain, in your heart, in your mouth to say, to be able to speak words of affirmation and encouragement unto your wife. Definitely put your wife first above everybody else. Don't allow other people, especially other women, to speak into your life, because then that's when you start listening and you start fading off from the camera angle. You get my point, right?
Very good demonstration.
And definitely third, you wanna have a group of, like how we had those friends that poured into us, people that will not just pat you on the shoulder or agree with you, but you want to have those that will point out your faults and say, hey, bro, your breath stinks. You need to tighten up because your wife is feeling certain type of way. Couples that you can actually open up to and tell them your issues, and not sugarcoat it, that they're not going to be biased and pick her or your side or yours or her side, but they'll examine the situation and be like, okay, I see your point. I might need some more information from her to see how, and we had that situation. We had situations like that where we got people involved in our lives to be able to help us navigate our situations, and we were able to work it out. Hello, 16 years later, we're still here because of those. Don't be afraid of asking or seeking for help. The Bible says, seek and you will find, ask and it shall be given. You need help, ask for it. You're not going to get it if you don't ask. I'm just saying.
Which I think is from some men, that's really what you're describing, is because pride gets in the way and ego gets in the way, right?
Yes.
And so you're saying that to put it aside, if you're going to have a happier marriage, that has to be put aside to experience what you're describing so beautifully, that for a man has to then recognize, what, this is my pride at play, my ego. And I need to recognize that if I'm going to have a happier relationship, then I have to put it aside.
Right. And let me just add this. I was watching a comedy show the other day, and the comedian was talking about how some of his comedy has gotten him to the point where he's gotten death threats from people. And his wife was like, look, you can't be cracking jokes on people and causing your family to have to deal with your mess. Yes, you are Mr. Celebrity and you are in the limelight and you're making money and all that good stuff. That's great. But we're the one that has to deal with the fallout of you insulting somebody for the sake of a joke, And the wife they didn't separate or anything like that, but she's like, hey, what's your line? And what he said is this. And I love it because I just watched it recently and I was like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. And he's like, you know what, my family comes first and I will continue to do these jokes. My line is, if it gets to the point of affecting my family, that's where I draw the line. Okay. So I think that as a man, you can do what you got to do, pursue your dream. But when it gets to the point of affecting your family, you draw the line and you pursue your family, because your family is going to be there. Your wife, your kids will be there for you, whether you are on the platforms whether you're on the lowest level, you and your family are going to be together if you pursue after them and let everything else fall in place.
Good word. I appreciate that you come back in and bring that into the narrative, because I think it's important to hear that what is most important in your life and family and your wife. So thank you for sharing that. So Yannick, speak to that wife who is feeling stuck and would like to have a happier marriage, but is not experiencing that. What would you say to her?
I would encourage her not to suffer in silence.
Mm,
So there's this idea that, okay, it's going to get better, or you assume the person knows what's going on in your mind or knows how you feel. And that's not necessarily the case.
mm,
And then bitterness starts to seep in. Your heart becomes hard because you assume, how can he not know?
mm,
Why doesn't he understand? And it's really because both of you haven't gone to the place of communicating to a point where you're willing to, if it takes all night, if it takes all week, if it takes the full month, whatever needs to get done, if it takes intervention, whether through a professional organization,
mm,
friends, put the pride aside and seek help. And
mm.
I've seen many women who, like I said, I take a lot of notes, right? And
Yeah.
some of my friends who are no longer together, there's always been that one conversation or comment that I recall her saying prior to the divorce. I was like, oh my gosh, was that her breaking point? Or
Mm,
was she at a breaking point and I didn't know? Maybe, you're trying to, well, I could have done this, but I'm like, I look back at those moments, okay, this is probably what she was experiencing. For example, in our industry, especially when one spouse or both are in the public eyes, many times you may be on separate stages, or there may be a season where your spouse is out, you
mhm,
know, fulfilling their dreams in your
mhm.
home, taking care of the children. And you may feel as though, what about my dreams?
Yeah.
What about me?
Yeah.
I have goals and desires too. Or you may end up quenching it, feeling like, okay, just let that person go. I want to speak to you to say, do not suffer in silence.
Yeah.
Voice your dreams, voice your desires. Just because you're married and you want to submit or be that, whatever
Mm,
you're thinking in your mind, that doesn't mean you need to be silent and lose the things that you're passionate about. It just means we have to do things a little different. So I
mm,
just want to encourage us, the wife that's there, take time to speak to your spouse. Maybe just do an introduction and just say, during this time, I want us to talk because I'm having feelings right now where it's putting me in a space and I don't want to resent you.
mm,
I don't want to be frustrated with you pursuing the things that you're excited about and me feeling neglected. How can we work together on this?
mm.
And it's easier said than done, but if you are intentional having those conversations, not when you're at the peak of so frustrated, you're screaming, you're yelling, you have a breakdown, but those moments where it's like, okay, let me invite him into my headspace. Let
Mhm.
me invite him into where I'm at right now. Because especially for those of us who have children, postpartum depression is real,
Yeah. Yeah.
and sometimes we're naive to it, feeling it's not me, it doesn't happen to me, it's other people. But if you're going through that, our hormones change.
Mhm.
With social media, it's like before they used to say the grass looks greener, on the other side. It's now
Right.
on post,
Mhm.
so just be careful, do a heart check, make sure that the things that you're desiring as well is not based on what you feel or you feeling jealous of others,
Mhm.
where it's like you desire the fantasy of what you're seeing friends post or experience, and you're not getting it here. That means your life is miserable, you're not in a love relationship. It's just, let's talk about it. How can we continue to love each other even when we're changing?
Mm,
How
mm,
we loved each other before is so different. So that's what I would say to the wife who's feeling that way. Do not suffer in silence, have that communication. And if he's not listening because he feels as though, I'm providing for the family,
yeah.
I'm out because I'm working, I'm out because I'm this, be very clear. You might be providing financially, but right now my emotions, the bank is empty. You know, we need to figure out a way to make that happen so we have a healthy work-life balance.
Wow. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better um, framing and articulating that piece to both a husband and a wife, because I'm hearing the intentionality, be intentional. I'm hearing put boundaries in place, right? And those line in the sand boundaries around the relationship, because those are safeguards. Because if you don't then become proactive in those ways, then it's going to happen to you rather than you making it happen for you. So being proactive is very important in what I'm hearing you guys say on both sides, the husband and the wife, to have a happier marriage. And so, I think that it's really well stated. Now, I mean, we could talk all evening about this whole thing because it's such a very rich topic, and you guys are providing such great insights into both your personal life, but also for others who are listening in. And so I think what I'd like to have is for the people who are listening in to say, okay, I've listened to Eddie, I've listened to Yannick, and I wonder, it sounds like they do have a lot of going on for themselves. And I would love for those individuals who are listening in to know how to even follow or to connect with you guys and see, maybe even learn by watching from the outside. So put no pressure, right? But, where they could follow and get more information and seeing what it is you guys are doing. Where would you have those people go to see and hear more of what you guys are doing individually, but as a couple as well?
Well, for myself is, Journey with Unique on Instagram, but that's just where I share just how to creatively find this work-life balance as I pursue this goal of owning the largest streaming platform.
Oh,
There
awesome.
is,
Modern day Oprah.
so, and on the business area is TFG 365 TV. And that's where, especially what we're talking about now, we do our best to live it. And it's because training for greatness is all about having a healthy work-life balance. So as you go on the journey to success, you don't reach to the top and you're alone, where you can look to your left and the right and you have your family, your friends, your community cheering you on and by your side. So that's where you can stay connected. And then music wise, you have that?
Yeah, you can follow me on all social media platforms at DJ Mr. E Music, DJ MREMUSIC. If you don't do social media, you can just go to my website, djmremusic.com, djmremusic.com.
And Journey with Yannick, how would I spell? So Yannick was spelled for someone who's listening.
Everything spelled correctly.
Well, really, I should just focus on TFG 365 TV.
Okay.
That way on social media and on the website as well. Because really, with everything trying to juggle, I post random.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I'll have the links, of course, provide the links for that as well. So those who are listening in, as you listen, you can just look at the show notes and the links provided that you can really connect with both Eddie and Yannick, because they, as you can tell, as you listen in, that they have a very a rich experience. They have had a great start and and laying a good foundation, which is really what you're experiencing. So I think having a happier marriage is not a walk in the park, but they're doing the work. They're being intentional. They're putting boundaries in place. The very things they're explaining and having us here, they're also doing for themselves, which I think is very reflective in what we are seeing and hearing. So Yannick, Eddie, I want to say thank you so very much for taking the time from your busy schedule with your family. Yeah, to make this happen. And, I think we got to do it again at some point and do a live broadcast where we can have people, chiming in and listening in and also ask questions. As I sat here, I think, man, this would be an awesome thing for that. But we'll set that up in the future. But I want to say thank you so very much for being on the Happier Marriage podcast and just sharing your hearts and being so vulnerable and open to all of us to learn. So thank you for taking the time for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. It was a beautiful experience. And I'm really grateful that we can speak to this in the season that we're in, because it does take a lot of work to have a happy, a joyous marriage. And being intentional, putting that work in, you can experience the joy of marriage. There is joy in it. It's not just all the drama, but when you break through those barriers, it's like a seed that's broken down within the soil, digging some roots, and then the world sees this beautiful flower. So everything is not perfect, but we are intentional of being dedicated to each other and working through the process and being on this platform to share and knowing that you're here to with the training that you provide too,
Yeah.
you know, on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's definitely helpful.
And I think it's progress, not perfection. And we are always progressing, right? And so we're moving on towards the mark of progression, of perfection at some point. But right now it's progress, not perfection. So thank you for sharing, and I appreciate it. So with that said, we're gonna do a wrap on this. And for those of you who are listening, so thank you for listening in, and make sure you connect with both Yannick and Eddie as they've shared their hearts, but also realize that it's possible. Your marriage can succeed as well. Yes, it's work, but it's possible. So let's make it happen and become the rare examples in this world that marriage can succeed. So I thank you very much for being here, and I do appreciate it.
Thank you.